All right, so you want to like really take your English to the next level, right? I mean, beyond just the basics to where you can handle anything.
Exactly. It's like going from, just getting by to really being able to express yourself, with nuance.
Yeah, nuance. So in this deep dive, that's exactly what we're doing, exploring words and phrases that most learners might not know. It's like unlocking a secret code to fluency.
It is. It's like having this whole extra layer of language at your disposal. And it's not just about sounding smart.
Right. It's about understanding those subtle things, how people really use English in everyday life.
Yeah, and how you can use it too. Like imagine being able to perfectly describe that person who, they just drive you crazy.
Yeah.
Or you're in this tricky situation and you just need the right phrase to nail it.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to uncover today, words and phrases to deal with all sorts of situations, from social stuff to really expressing your feelings. We've got idioms, slang, the whole shebang.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. Okay, so where should we start? How about those tricky social situations? You meet someone new and you want to describe them, but you don't want to just say nice or mean.
Right, because those are just so basic, and sometimes they don't really capture the whole picture.
Yeah, so let's get more specific. For example, one word that stood out to me from our research was dog's body. What do you make of that one?
Dog's body. It's not just a servant, right? It's more like you're the one stuck with all the crappy jobs, the ones nobody else wants.
Yeah, like you're at the bottom of the totem pole.
Exactly. So it really highlights a power dynamic, where someone's being taken advantage of.
Ooh, I feel like we've all been there at some point in our lives. Okay, what about this phrase, off the record? Now, I always think of gossip when I hear that.
It's really gossip. It's like you're sharing this juicy secret, but you make it clear, hey, this stays between us.
Right. Total confidentiality.
But, and this is important, it also has this serious side, especially in professional settings.
Oh, yeah, like if someone says off the record, I think, and then they tell you something sensitive.
Exactly. It's like they're giving you this inside scoop, but they don't want to be officially quoted. High stakes.
So it's all about context with that one, understanding what off the record really means in the moment. Okay, here's one that I think we can all relate to rub someone up the wrong way.
Yes, those people who just have a knack for annoying us.
Sometimes, without even trying, right?
Oh, absolutely. But sometimes it's intentional. They're doing it on purpose.
Interesting. But even if it's unintentional, it's still important to understand why someone rubs us the wrong way, right?
Yeah, because it could be a personality clash, maybe different communication styles.
So maybe it's not that they're a bad person, just that we don't quite mesh well.
Right. And that's where understanding these subtle social cues can really help. Okay, so we've got those tricky personalities down. Now let's move on to something a bit more fun. Idioms.
Oh yeah, I love idioms. They're like little puzzles that paint these vivid pictures.
Exactly. And they add so much color to your language, making it more interesting and engaging.
All right, so let's crack open one of these puzzles. What about clutching at straws? It sounds kind of desperate, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Think about it like this. You're in a really tough situation. You've tried everything, and now you're just grabbing at anything, even if it's a long shot.
Like applying for jobs you're totally unqualified for, or trying to fix a relationship that's clearly over.
Exactly. Clutching at straws. It's that last-ditch effort when all else has failed. And we've all been there at some point, right?
Yeah, totally. It's a universal human experience. Okay, here's another one making a mockery of. That's not just a simple complaint, is it?
No, it's more intense, like you're saying. This is so wrong, it's almost laughable.
Yeah, like it completely undermines the whole point of something.
Right. Like imagine a rule is supposed to make things fair, but then someone finds a loophole and uses it to their advantage. You could say they're making a mockery of the whole system.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, I'm loving these idioms. What else do we have?
Well, how about we spice things up a bit with some slang?
Oh, yeah, slang. It's like the secret handshake of fluency.
It is. It adds that informality, that sense of, being in the know.
Okay, hit me with a good one. What's on our slang list?
How about gobsmacked? It's a fantastic word for expressing total astonishment.
Gobsmacked. I like it. So, if you see something totally unexpected, something that just blows you away.
Exactly. Like you're speechless, your jaw is on the floor.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try to use gobsmacked this week. But, with all slang, it's got to be the right time and place, right?
Oh, absolutely. Context is key. You wouldn't use gobsmacked in a formal meeting, but it'd be perfect with friends.
So it's all about being streetwise with your slang choices.
Exactly. And being streetwise is more than just knowing slang. It's about having that awareness of your surroundings, that social intelligence to navigate different situations.
Like knowing when to speak up, when to stay quiet, when to blend in, when to stand out.
It's that sixth sense that keeps you safe and helps you thrive in any environment. Okay, so we've covered some social situations, delved into idioms, and even dipped our toes into the slang pool.
I feel like my English brain is getting a serious workout. What else is on our vocabulary adventure today?
Well, we've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of nuanced words waiting to be explored, from describing those tricky in-between feelings to uncovering the power dynamics hidden within everyday language.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing. I can't wait to delve into that. But for now, let's pause here and let all this awesome vocabulary sink in. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
See you soon.
Welcome back. I'm really enjoying this, just diving into these words and phrases that we use all the time but don't always think about deeply. Me too. It's amazing how many layers of meaning there are to uncover, even in those seemingly simple, everyday words. Before we took a little pause, you mentioned words that describe those tricky feelings, the ones that are hard to pin down. I'm really curious about that. What kind of words are we talking about here?
Well, think about those times when you're not exactly happy or sad, but somewhere in between,
Yeah.
Like maybe you're feeling a bit uneasy or perhaps a little jaded.
Okay, yeah, I get that. Uneasy, like that feeling of apprehension. Not quite fear, but not exactly comfortable either.
Exactly. One of our sources describes uneasy as a feeling of being unsure, fearful, or anxious. They even give this example of someone feeling uneasy about hiring a new employee because they came across as a bit cocky in the interview.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you have this gut feeling that something's not quite right, but you can't put your finger on it.
And that's why it's so important to pay attention to those subtle feelings, those uneasy vibes, because they can often be warning signs. What about jaded? Does that word resonate with you at all?
Jaded? It's like when you've seen it all before, nothing really excites you anymore.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like you're tired, almost cynical, because you've been disappointed too many times.
One of our sources talks about feeling jaded from having to catch up on a backlog of paperwork. We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of just being drained and unmotivated, like, what's the point?
Exactly. Okay, so moving on from those tricky emotions, let's look at words that describe people's personalities, those character traits that really make them who they are. One word that jumped out at me from our research was pompous.
Ooh, pompous. Not a very flattering word, is it?
Definitely not. It's like that person who thinks they're so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, and they love to show off their supposed superiority, right? Like using big words just to sound intelligent, even if it confuses everyone else.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst. One of our sources even calls a politician a pompous fool for giving this long-winded speech about overseas trade.
Wow, that's a pretty strong opinion. It suggests that the writer thinks this politician is completely out of touch, more focused on their own ego than actually helping people.
It's amazing how one word can convey so much, isn't it? Okay, how about cocky? Is that similar to pompous?
Cocky is definitely in the same family as pompous, but it has a slightly different vibe. It's more about that unfounded confidence, that swaggering, know-it-all attitude that can be really annoying.
Like that person who walks into a room like they own the place, even though they haven't really earned it.
Exactly. And, one of our sources mentioned someone coming across as cocky in a job interview, which actually made the interviewer uneasy.
What do you think that is? I mean, isn't confidence a good thing?
It is, but there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness. Cockiness can be a sign of insecurity, like you're trying too hard to impress. And it can also make people question your ability to work well in a team.
So it's all about balance, finding that sweet spot between being confident and being humble. Okay, for a more positive trait, let's talk about streetwise.
Ah, streetwise. Now that's a good one. It suggests someone who's savvy, aware of their surroundings, and able to navigate tricky situations, especially in a city environment.
Like they've got that sixth sense for trouble. They can spot a scam a mile away.
Exactly. One of our sources describes someone as being streetwise because they know how to handle troublemakers on their way home. It's about having that instinct for self-preservation, that ability to read people and situations.
It's like having that inner radar that helps you avoid danger and make smart choices.
Precisely. Okay, let's jump back into the world of idioms for a bit. What about to make a mockery of, We touched on this one earlier, but I think it deserves a little more attention.
Yeah, it's a really powerful phrase, isn't it? It's not just about poking fun at something. It's more about expressing outrage. Like you're saying, this is so wrong, it's almost absurd.
Right, like when something is supposed to be serious or important, but it's been completely undermined or devalued.
One of our sources uses this idiom to describe how a legal loophole completely makes a mockery of the justice system.
Exactly. It highlights how something that's supposed to uphold fairness and justice has been twisted and manipulated for personal gain.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and look for an idiom that captures a feeling of accomplishment, that sense of satisfaction when your efforts pay off.
How about to reap the rewards?
Hmm.
It perfectly captures that feeling of, like, enjoying the benefits of all your hard work.
Oh, I like that. It's like planting a seed, nurturing it, and then finally getting to harvest the fruits of your labor.
Exactly. One of our sources uses this idiom to describe how England would reap the rewards if they won the World Cup. Imagine that collective joy and national pride.
It's a beautiful image, isn't it? Okay, before we move on to our next theme, I want to circle back to something we've touched on a few times already, the importance of context in language.
Oh, absolutely. Context is everything. It's like the key to unlocking the true meaning of words and phrases.
One of our sources gives the example of the phrase off the record. We all know it from gossip, but it can have a totally different meaning in a professional setting, right?
Yeah. Like imagine you're a journalist interviewing a politician and they say, off the record, I can tell you. That's a completely different ballgame than gossiping with your friends.
Right. So we have to be really careful about how we interpret language, paying attention to the subtle cues and the unspoken rules of the situation.
Exactly. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about understanding the intentions behind them. Okay. Are you ready to explore our next theme?
Oh, yeah. Hit me with it. What's next on our language adventure?
Well, our next theme dives into the world of authority, influence, and control, exploring those subtle power dynamics that shape our interactions. We'll be looking at words like undermine, back down, and bluff, those moments when people are vying for power or trying to assert their dominance.
Ooh, this sounds juicy. I can't wait to unpack those power plays.
Me too. It's going to be a fascinating exploration of how language can be used to manipulate, persuade, and ultimately control the narrative.
I'm ready to see how these words play out in real-life situations.
Well, let's dive right in. One of our sources gives the example of someone undermining their colleague's authority by constantly criticizing their work.
Ooh, that's a classic power move, isn't it? Trying to make someone look bad so you can climb the ladder.
Exactly. It's a deliberate attempt to chip away at their confidence and credibility to make them question their own abilities.
So it's not just about giving feedback. It's about using language as a weapon to gain the upper hand. What about to back down? That phrase always makes me think of like defeat.
It does have that connotation, doesn't it? Like you're giving up, surrendering to the other person's will.
One of our sources mentions sponsors backing down on their demands for the layout of Wembley Stadium. What do you make of that example?
It sounds like a classic power struggle.
Yeah.
The sponsors trying to exert their influence, but ultimately having to concede to the stadium management.
So sometimes backing down can be a strategic move, right? Like choosing your battles wisely.
Absolutely. There are times when it's better to retreat and regroup than to risk losing everything in a fight you can't win. Okay, now for a word that I think we all use, but maybe don't fully understand, bluff.
Oh, bluff. That's a good one. It's all about deception, right? Like pretending you have something you don't.
Exactly. It's about projecting confidence, even when you might be feeling totally insecure.
One of our sources describes someone bluffing their way through an exam. I think we've all been there at some point.
Oh, definitely. That fear of being exposed as a fraud, that feeling of, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's universal.
But you mentioned earlier that bluffing can sometimes be a necessary skill. How so?
Well, there are situations where projecting confidence, even if we don't entirely feel it, can be really helpful. Like, think about job interviews or salary negotiations. Sometimes a well-placed bluff can give you that extra edge.
So it's about knowing when to bluff and when to be authentic, right? It's about reading the situation and playing the game strategically.
Precisely. And that's where a deep understanding of language, those subtle nuances of meaning and intention, can be so valuable.
It's like having that secret decoder ring that allows you to see through the smoke and mirrors and understand what's really going on.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to do here, to equip you with the knowledge and the tools to navigate these complex social interactions with confidence and fluency.
I'm feeling so much more streetwise already.
That's great to hear. But before we get too carried away with our newfound linguistic superpowers, Let's take a moment to recap what we've learned so far. We've explored words and phrases for describing those tricky in-between feelings, for dissecting different personality types, and for understanding those subtle power dynamics that shape our interactions.
And we've delved into the fascinating world of idioms and slang, discovering how they can add color and depth to our language.
It's been a truly enriching journey so far, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, though. There's still so much more to explore. We've got a whole world of language out there just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. Language is a living, breathing thing, constantly evolving and adapting to the world around us. And that's what makes it so fascinating to study.
I'm excited to see where this linguistic adventure takes us next. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been having so much fun, haven't we?
I know, right? It's amazing how much there is to say about these words we use all the time.
Before the break, we were talking about those words tied to power dynamics, like undermine. We talked about backing down, too. So what about bluff? Where does that one fit in?
Well, with bluff, it's interesting because it all comes down to, this kind of performance. You're trying to project this image of confidence, even if deep down you might be freaking out.
Right. It's like fake it till you make it.
Yeah, kinda. Think about that example from our research. Someone bluffing their way through an exam.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there, haven't we? Sweating bullets, trying to act like we know the answers when we really have no clue.
Exactly. It's that classic fear of, what if they find out I'm a fraud?
Imposter syndrome, big time. But you said earlier that bluffing can actually be a useful skill sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. There are times when you kind of have to project that confidence, even if you don't fully feel it. Like imagine you're in a job interview or you're trying to negotiate a better salary.
Yeah, I guess in those situations, a little bluff could give you an edge.
Right. But it's a delicate balance because you don't want to come across as arrogant or dishonest.
So it's all about reading the room, knowing when to push and when to hold back.
Exactly. And that's why this whole deep dive is so important. It's about understanding those subtle cues, those layers of meaning that can really make or break a situation.
It's like having a secret weapon, You can decode those hidden messages and use language to your advantage.
Exactly. And as we've talked about, it's all about context. The same word can have totally different meanings depending on the situation, who you're talking to, even their tone of voice or body language.
It's a reminder that language is never static, right? It's always changing, evolving, new words pop up, old words take on new meanings. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really is. And that's what keeps it so interesting. There's always something new to learn, some new way to express ourselves.
I feel like I've learned so much already from this deep dive. I mean, just thinking about all the words we've talked about, from describing feelings and personalities to navigating those power dynamics. It's a lot.
It is. But hopefully it's also been really fun and engaging.
Oh, definitely. So before we wrap up, any last bits of wisdom you want to share with our listeners who are, really keen to level up their English?
Well, I'd say the most important thing is to stay curious. Pay attention to how people use language around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you hear a word you don't know. And most importantly, have fun with it.
I love that. It's all about playing with language, experimenting, and seeing what happens. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into advanced everyday English. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Now, before you go, I have a little challenge for you. Pick one word or phrase we talked about today and try to use it in a conversation this week. You might be surprised at how it changes things, how it helps you connect with people on a deeper level. And who knows, maybe you'll even impress someone with your newfound vocabulary skills. Until next time, happy word nerding.